When Brent Brennan took over for the Arizona Wildcats, he kind of knew that this was going to take some time to get things back on track. A 4-8 season was disappointing, but they are looking to bounce back in 2025. We take a preview of the Arizona Wildcats and see what we should expect for them in 2025. Brennan's done a good job at San Jose State, and he's hoping to take some of that success and bring it with him to Arizona. Now, it will take some time for things to get sorted out. But a 4-8 season last year was disappointing. I think there are a lot of people that expected better from him, and it just didn't go quite to plan. It was an offense that relied way too much on Tedero McMillan and a defense that really couldn't get any stops. They addressed some needs via the transfer portal, but I don't know how much we should expect from this team this year. Now, the roster changes, the big one, really the only one that I think has the biggest impact on this team is losing Tedero McMillan. Now, McMillan was an absolute stud for this team. He was the clear go-to guy for Noah Fifita, and now you're looking at who could you possibly replace him with. Well, you're not going to do that with one guy. You might not even do that with two guys. But I do feel like this staff did a decent job of bringing in players that can be solid contributors. Now we're talking about Chris Hudson coming in from Washington State. That's a reliable pass catcher who's a tough as nails receiver, and he's going to be a solid contributor for this team in 2025. Luke Wysong comes in from New Mexico. You brought in Javen Watley from Chattanooga. So you did some things to bring in talent that's going to hopefully make this group a little bit more balanced. It's not just going to be one guy. You just don't have a McMillan on your roster anymore, but you at least did something to bring in guys that could potentially help in that regard. You also lost some, I think, key talent in on the defense, just maybe not to the magnitude of McMillan. So losing Taiti Uyagalele, you lose Jacob Manu, Takario Davis. Those are three guys I think that are fairly big losses for this defense. You could make an argument that Gunnar Maldonado is another one that kind of fits in that description, but overall, I think you have certain players you feel like will be able to replace some of those guys maybe, but I don't really know how it's all going to sort out. But Brent Brennan has done good things at San Jose State. We'll see if he can do the same thing for the Arizona Wildcats. The offense is going to look different, plain and simple, and maybe they rely more on the rushing attack because McMillan is gone. You do have a good group of running backs that could make that happen. The passing attack will look a little bit different as well, but it's going to really depend on what Noah Fifita can do with his arm. Now, Fifita is going to be someone that has to improve this year. When you look at what he did last year, almost 3,000 yards with 18 touchdowns. You'd like to see him reduce those 12 interceptions. But when you look at what he did 2 years ago, it's clear that this is a guy who took a step back in his development. It's clear that he took a step back in his production. And I think that there are some things that he has to figure out as a smaller quarterback. How do you get the ball to certain receivers? How do you get the ball downfield when you can't see certain guys? Because the offensive lineman that he will throw behind could make things very difficult. And he's listed at 5'10" on Arizona's roster. So I don't necessarily know how accurate that is, but I have a feeling that they didn't just make him seem shorter. So that's going to be a problem. You also can't just throw it up to Tedero McMillan and hope for the best. The rushing attack should be interesting, though. You bring in Ishmael Mahdi from Texas State. Kedrick Riscano is back. You also brought in Quincy Craig from Portland State. So you're going to have some new faces that will be contributors, that will be factors in this offense. So it'll be fun to see how these guys figure in. But this is a group that finished 120th running the football. So that has to improve, plain and simple. The wide receivers, we talked about them before. Replacing McMillan will take some time. You return Chris Hunter, who is the second leading receiver on the team, but we're not going to show you the disparity between him and McMillan because it's just real bad. But Chris Hunter could be someone that takes a step forward. Chris Hudson, like we talked about before, he's someone who I think can be reliable. Luke Wysong, same thing. Keon Burnett did leave via the transfer portal, but he came back. after spending time at Kansas. So he is back. He'll be a contributor. You also bring in Trey Spivey. We talked about Jamin Watley. We also can see maybe Sam Olsen playing a role in the passing attack as well. You also bring in transfers to help on the offensive line. Ty Buchanan comes in from Texas Tech. You bring in Kaina DeCambra from Hawaii to be your center. So you're looking at two different guys that could elevate this group, and keeping Noah Fafita upright is going to be a big key. It's a big key for every offense, but giving Noah Fafita time to develop, to find guys that are open, that will be a big thing that'll help Arizona tremendously this year. The defense is going to be interesting because it also was a group that did not play very well. Despite some of the offense's success at times, the defense definitely was the group that was limiting what this offense and this team could do. That being said, I think there are some really nice pieces on this defense. Trey Smith is one of them, and this is still a Trey Smith that is extremely underrated. Someone who had 8 tackles for loss last year, 4.5 sacks, has good NFL size at 6'5", 259 pounds. So he'll be someone to keep an eye on for the next level. You also bring in Deshaun McKnight from App State. You bring in a number of transfers on the defensive line that should contribute right off the bat. The one I'm very intrigued about is Malachi Bailey. Comes in from Alcorn State and was an absolute monster at Alcorn State. 54 tackles, 19.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks. At the linebacker position, you bring in Riley Wilson from Montana, another guy who had big numbers, 83 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, and Montana was winning football games. So it wasn't like he was playing on a bad team by any means. He was playing for a really good team. Now he gets the chance to do it in the Big 12. Tay Brown returns after a 69 tackle season, had 4 tackles for loss. But this is a linebacker group that's going through a transition. It's going to take a little bit of time to get acclimated with some of the new faces. And that includes on pretty much every level except for the secondary. The secondary does have some transfers coming in, but for the most part, there is a good group, a good core of guys returning. Marquise Groves-Killebrew is back at one of the corner spots. Opposite of him is Texas transfer and actually played for Brent Brennan at San Jose State, Javion Cole. Behind him is his former teammate, Michael Dansby, who comes in from San Jose State. You do also return 2 safeties in Dalton Johnson and Genesis Smith. The star position will be Traden Stukes. Behind him, Aiden Garnes is someone who comes in from West Virginia that could have a big impact. So overall, you feel like this is a group that's got returning talent. It's just, what does that mean? Does that actually mean that they'll be better, or is it going to take some time for them to sort things out? We don't necessarily know what we're going to get from this group, but having some continuity on that side of the ball could make for an interesting season. The schedule is not ideal. The schedule is going to test this team quite a bit. The over-under is currently set at 4.5. I think the ceiling at best is 6-6, and I honestly felt kind of generous giving them 6-6. I don't feel super confident in what this team can do in terms of winning football games, but we're going to find out. We'll find out if Brent Brennan has some magic. We didn't think that he was going to win at San Jose State, and he figured things out. You start the year with Hawaii and Weber State. Now, Hawaii should be a better team. That will give us a good indicator of how ready this team is right off the bat. Then you get Kansas State, though Kansas State does have to go overseas early in the season, so maybe that won't be as bad as we anticipate, but we will see. Then you get a bye week before you go to Iowa State. You host Oklahoma State at home. You host BYU right after that, and then you go to Houston before your next bye week. The final stretch includes a trip to Colorado, Kansas, a trip to Cincinnati, Baylor at home, and then going to Arizona State. So it's not looking good, and it's kind of all over the place on the channel. 11% of you think they'll finish 1st through 4th, which would be absolutely mind-boggling. That would be insane to see that happen. 40% say 5th through 8th. That would be a solid year for this team. That would be better than my prediction at the ceiling. 9th through 12th, 25%, and the other 25% say 13th through 16th. So most of you think that this is going to be a team that is towards the bottom. And I realize now that that doesn't add up to 100%. It goes to 101. But I'm going to guess that the 11% rounds up to, or is rounded up from like 10.9 or something like that. But still, 10% first through fourth, 40% fifth through eighth, ninth through 12, 25%, 13 through 16, 25%. So we'll see. It's kind of all over the place. I don't think a lot of people have a good idea of where Arizona is going to fit, but I know that life without Tetero McMillan is going to be tough, but maybe it's an okay thing because you found ways to maybe balance out your offense where you don't rely on one guy to do everything, and that could help your team tremendously.